everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny, and you can find me on Instagram and on Ravelry as Honeybird Studio. Today I have a different video from my usual podcasts and stuff, and that is going to be a knit and chat style video with some Q&A. I recently asked on Instagram if anyone had any questions to ask me that I could answer in this video, and I got a handful of questions, a couple of personal ones, and more on knitting questions. And so I thought I would bring something to knit today and chat while I answer the questions. Let me just situate myself here. I'm all wrapped up. So I was looking through all the whips I have right now, and I think this is the only one that I could really knit on, like knit and chat at the same time. Because everything else is a little bit more complex than this, and I've been knitting on this one for a while now, so I've got the pattern mostly memorized. So this is, now that I'm untangled, this is my gown cardigan by Irene Lynn. And I'm just working on adding a couple more inches to the body and then I'll be done. So we'll see how far I get today. Probably not very far. Each row takes me about 12 to 15 minutes, so we'll see. And also on the topic of Irene Lynn, what I'm wearing today is the Lana vest by Irene Lynn. So this is the second one that I've knit. This one's a little bit more oversized than my first one. So if I remember to get pictures, I'll take a picture and put it on the screen so you can see my whole outfit. Well, not that my outfit's very wow, but so you can see how I styled it today. But yeah, so basically I wrote down the questions as they came in on Instagram, and I forgot to write down who asked them. So I remember a couple of them who asked certain questions. But yeah, and I don't know how to go, now that the story is gone, I don't know how to go back and look at the questions that were asked for that video. It seems to be gone. So it's a good thing I did write them down. So what I'll do is I'll start with the knitting related questions, and then I will go into the more personal life questions. Actually, I don't even think I'll be able to knit for the first question, because the first question is a really interesting, I find it very interesting to know this information about other knitters as well. So basically, how and when did you start knitting? So this was an interesting question, because when I think, how old was I? I've been thinking about this all morning, and I was like, how old exactly was I? Somewhere between grade 3 and grade 4 is when I learned how to knit. And I think I was somewhere between the age of 10 and 11, I would think. And basically, my knitting origin story is I learned how to knit from my babysitter, because back then we had kind of the street that I grew up on and the elementary school I went to, everyone knew everyone. All the parents knew each other, all the kids knew all the kids, and there was a woman who lived right down the street from the elementary school who was the go-to babysitter. It's kind of like a daycare. I don't know. She watched a lot of kids, and by a lot I mean probably there was 6 or 8 of us, I think. Anyways, so at my babysitter's, when I would go after school, she would sit in the living room in her lazy boy chair, and she would knit. So she had a basket next to her of yarn, and she'd be knitting mostly sweaters. If I remember correctly, I want to say she was knitting colorwork sweaters, because I remember thinking that is the coolest thing ever, with all the little designs and stuff on it. And I think there really wasn't much to do at our babysitters. It was, the TV was on, there were cartoons on, and then there was a side room where the older kids would hang out. I say older, you had the young kids that were kindergarten, grade 1, 2, and then you had the older kids that were grade 3, 4, 5, I suppose. Anyways, so at at that point I was hanging out with like the couple of older kids in the side room, and it just would get boring. There wasn't really much to do. We didn't want to play with the little kid toys and didn't want to watch the little kid cartoons. And so I remember thinking to myself, like, I want to learn how to knit because I need something to do with my hands. And what my babysitter was doing, again, I thought looked really cool. And so I asked her if she could teach me how to knit. And so my very first foray into knitting was, I guess, like everyone else, is learning how to just do the knit stitch, like garter back and forth on straight needles with whatever yarn I could get my hands on. And so I practiced at her place whenever we would go, or whenever I would go after school for babysitting, and I would, play around with the straight needles and some yarn that she had left over. And eventually I got the hang of how to knit. And the way I knit is English throwing, if I remember, if I'm thinking about it correctly. I know I'm definitely not continental. I actually don't even tension the yarn between any of my fingers. I hold the yarn between my finger and my thumb, and I wrap it and throw it, kind of thing. So that's just what worked for me at a young age, and I think I've tried to do continental, but I couldn't get the hang of it. I've been knitting for so many years now that changing my style now doesn't seem like I need to. I don't have any pain when I knit. Anyways, so my brother at that time, I think it was like grade 4, he was in grade 5, he played baseball. And so at this point, it was like, if I wasn't at my babysitter's, we were at a baseball game. And so I just needed something to do with my hands. And what better thing to do to sit and knit while everyone else is playing baseball or at the park or whatever. And so actually, I finally found this morning, I'm at my parents' place, so I went through a bunch of several boxes of my childhood stuff, and I finally found the very first thing I ever knit. And it's certainly seen better days, because this thing is pretty old. It's dirty, and it's been sitting in a box for a very long time. And essentially, I'm assuming, wow, is that where did I do a stretchy bind off? That's what it looks like. Where did I cast on? Oh, I don't even know. But I didn't weave in my ends. I think what it looks like is that I just knotted. I just put knots in the yarn and then cut them. And so it's very holy. But anyways, this is all yarn from thrift stores. I remember going with my mom and like begging her, like, can I get a bag of yarn? And it was usually just a Ziploc bag or like a plastic bag with a dozen different colors. And basically what I did was I sat and watched my brother play baseball while I just knit back and forth on straight needles with whatever yarn that I could get my hands on. And I just knit until I ran out, because you could see, like, I didn't really pay attention to which side I was attaching the yarn to, because it looks like, yeah, there's several points where I attached the yarn on one side, and then other points where I attached it on the other side. But in any case, this was supposed to be a scarf. Like, this was originally supposed to be very, very long, but I was not a very fast knitter. And by the time baseball season ended, I was, what was that? By the end of 4th grade? Yeah, by the time I got to grade 5, I started doing sports and stuff, so I didn't have time. I put knitting aside. So I basically learned how to knit somewhere between 3rd grade and 4th grade, and I knit for maybe like that year or so, on and off. I wasn't knitting every day like I do now, but at baseball, this is what I knit. I remember specifically sitting in the chair with some of the other like adults and telling them that I'm gonna knit a blanket. Like, I was like, oh, first it was gonna be a scarf, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually gonna knit a blanket. I'm gonna make it really, really big, and I'm gonna make lots of strips and sew them together or something. That never happened, but yeah. So I'm looking at this and it's like, there's definitely, most of this is acrylic, but it looks like there are a few sections that might have been wool, because it looks like it has been attacked by moths at some point. This thing has been in a box for many, many years. So, but it's really cool that I did keep it, and it's still mostly in one piece. And so I can look back and say, wow, this was my first thing I ever knit. So yeah, so it's kind of like a side story from like when I first learned how to knit. Um, and on that note, this was the first thing I ever knit, just not from a pattern or anything. I just cast on a number of stitches and then just knit back and forth. But my babysitter encouraged me to try to knit from a pattern from a magazine. And actually, this teddy bear that's sitting behind me is the first thing I ever, like the first pattern I ever knit. I did not sew on the eyes, and I did not put the ribbon on. My babysitter did that for me. I also don't think I seamed this myself. I'm pretty sure my babysitter did the seaming. But this is my teddy bear, the first pattern, knitting pattern that I ever did, mostly by myself. It needed, I think it required, it was all garter stitch. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm looking at this and it looks like it's just garter stitch. Very stretched out, very loose gauge. And I think the only things I needed to know was how to increase and decrease. And I think, if I remember correctly, the increase that I did was the knit front back, and the decrease I did was just a knit two together. I'm assuming it was nothing more complicated than that. I don't think I would have, I don't know. I mean, I probably, at that age, I probably could have figured it out. Or I probably, you know. But anyways, so this is my teddy bear. And I've had it, yeah, since I made it, basically. The reason why this teddy bear does not have a nose and a mouth is because I was very impatient, and I was going camping with my family for the first time. What was that, in 4th grade? The summer between 3rd and 4th, or the summer between 4th and 5th? Something like that. In any case, I was like, I need my teddy bear for camping. Because at that point, I didn't have like an actual stuffed animal that well, no, I did have a stuffed animal that I liked taking everywhere. But this was very important to me. I was very proud of this, and I'm still very proud of this. But you can see it's seamed up the back. So this was knit flat, and everything was seamed. Because like I said, I knit everything on flat needle, or on straight needles back then. But yeah, so that's my teddy bear. It's certainly seen better days. Thankfully, it's made out of acrylic yarn. It hasn't been, I've actually been taking pretty good care of it. I've never put it in storage. I've always kept it out in my bedroom, but like since moving, I've left it here in the studio because I have a new teddy bear, or a new stuffed animal that I sleep with. Anyways, so that's like how I originally, my very first initial learning how to knit was back in somewhere between 3rd and 4th grade, and those are the things that I have kept that I knit. I think it was, I went to the library to find more knitting books, and right next to the knitting books was crochet books, and I thought crochet looked really cool. Like, granny squares were so cool looking to my young brain, and I mean, I think they're still cool now, but I took out a bunch of crochet books, and I learned how to crochet through the pictures, and the way I crochet now is the way I knit. The way I hold the hook. I transfer it back and forth between both my hands when I'm yarning over, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone crochet like that. And I think it's because I learned how to knit first, and then I learned how to crochet through pictures. And my brain was on like, oh, the knitting motions also transfer over to crochet. In any case, when I picked up crochet, I put knitting to the side, and I crocheted a bunch of granny squares and stuff, and I think that was it. Like I said, once I got to 5th grade, I started playing sports and stuff, and I had a whole bunch of other extracurricular activities that I was doing. So both knitting and crochet kind of fell by the wayside. However, I did pick up knitting again. In 2016 is when I went to my first like local yarn shop, and it was to pick up stuff to crochet the virus shawl, which I crocheted, I think, like 20 of them. And while I was at the yarn shop, I saw all the samples that were knit, and I was like, wow, this looks really cool, and I really want to learn how to do it. But it wasn't until 2017 that I finally picked up knitting needles and actually knit something. And actually, I'm going to pause this for one sec. Okay, so like I said, in 2017, so 2016 is when I went to my first local yarn shop and bought like luxury yarn. or like, you know, yarn that wasn't from Walmart or Michael's or like a craft store, like acrylic yarns. I went to the yarn shop and I bought like, I think Manos del Uruguay and Malabrigo were the two yarns that I was buying to make virus shawls. Anyways, so when I was talking with the yarn shop owner and she said to give knitting a try, because I told her that I used to knit a long time ago. And she said, "Oh yeah, you should give it a try." And I was like, "Okay, well, what do you think I can do, like with my experience?" And she's like, "Well, you know how to knit." I was like, "Yep." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure I can figure out how to purl." And basically she's like, "Okay, we'll just pick a pattern and we'll show you the needles and the yarn to do, or to use for it." And so what I did was I picked I don't remember the name of the pattern, but I'm pretty sure it was one. It's by Felicia Lowe, or someone who designed for Sweet Georgia, and it was a shawl, a lace weight shawl, on like, I don't know, 3mm needles or something. So I bought lace yarn, 3mm fixed circular needles, and this shawl pattern, and I was the yarn shop owner was incredibly encouraging. And so basically what I did was I went home and I started reading the pattern. I tried to do it, and all the stitches were looking wrong. And well, they weren't looking wrong. They were all looking similar, but not the way I thought they were supposed to look. And so basically I took what I had knit back to the yarn shop and showed it to the owner, and I said, "There's something wrong here." And she said, "Oh, you're twisting your stitches." She asked me to show her how I knit. And basically I was knitting through the back loop, and I was knitting through the back loop, and I must have been purling through the back loop as well or something, because like it was twisted on every row. And yeah, so she's like, "No, she showed me how to knit correctly through the front loop and how to purl correctly and stuff like that." And I was like, "Okay, I'm off to the races." I went home and I started over again, started knitting. I was like, "Wow, this looks so much better." And basically after, I don't remember how long it took me, but I was determined to knit this shawl. And it might have taken me a month, maybe, because I mean, it's lace, but it's not really. I actually have the piece that I messed up. So this is as far as I got before I realized that something wasn't right. Something about my stitches. My stitches were twisted. Oh, and my increases were. I was messing up all my increases. You can't really see. Is this my twisted stitch? Oh, okay, I see. I was twisting the knit stitches, but not the purl stitches. That's what it was. I see. Yeah, and then I was messing up all my increases because I don't know. I was somewhat brand new to knitting at that point because I hadn't knit for many years before that. Anyways, so this is actually my first knitting project that I knit in 2017 after not knitting for a very long time. And so I knit this shawl. It's a very, very vibrant, like electric blue almost. But there's certainly, I'm pretty sure there were probably a couple of mistakes in the lace part. Whether I can find them or not is, I doubt I'd be able to find them. There's so much lace in this, but I was extremely proud of myself for knitting not only on lace, not only on lace weight yarn, but also doing like lace work as my very first re-entry into knitting. I blocked this, but I've never worn it. I think it's more or less a trophy for me, just like my teddy bear. It's kind of just a reminder of like where I started, or where I restarted in this case. So yeah. So in 2017, that's when I did this, and then I just kind of like took off with knitting, and I've been knitting ever since. I think it was 2017 was 50-50 crochet and knitting. By the end of 2017, I was purely knitting and rarely crocheting. And even to this day, I crocheted one item last year, and I think I crocheted one item this year. What did I do? I did like little crochet coasters or something. But in any case, that's a very long story of how I learned how to knit, how and when, and how I relearned to knit and stuff. So anyways, so that's the answer to that question. Um, Hopefully it wasn't too much of a tangent around there. Um, yes, okay, so I'm going to try and keep track of these questions by crossing them off. Okay, so I've answered that one. Okay, so the next one is, do you have a favorite time of year for knitting? And I think, honestly, I knit year round. I knit all the time. The only times I don't knit is when I'm too busy with like work or like other activities. But for the most part, knitting is like my number one hobby, I guess. And so, um, in terms of like seasons, I would say my favorite season to knit for is definitely fall and winter. Definitely for the colder seasons. And but in terms of like time of year, I would say I guess summer's not the my most. I don't know. I mean, I still knit a lot in the summer too, because I'm very lucky that I have air conditioning in my place, so I can sit inside in the cool, like atmosphere, I guess, and be able to knit on things that are made of wool. Um, but I'm thinking, yeah, I think like to answer that question honestly, like I like to knit for the colder seasons, but in terms of like what season is my favorite to knit in, like during, I would say any time but summer. I mean, like fall, it just feels so much more cozy in the fall and winter and even in the spring. Um, and I've after this summer, I've realized that I don't really like to knit summer knits, summer garments, or like I don't know. I would prefer like I think my plan for next year is basically in the summer I'm gonna knit accessories for the winter. I think that's what I'm gonna go for. That seems more reasonable considering I don't really wear knits in the summer, even the ones that I have knit that are considered more of a summer garment or a summer accessory, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. I found that this summer I just didn't really wear anything that I knit. Trying to think off the top of my head if I what if I mean I wear my bralettes all the time, but that's like year round. But anyways, yeah. Sorry, that was kind of going off on a tangent, but yeah. Favorite time of year for knitting, definitely again, like I said, the colder months, best time. Warmer months, not so much, but I will still knit. I'm just gonna choose next year not to knit summer garments in the summer. I'm gonna knit accessories for the winter because I think what I'll do is probably spend the summer knitting like charity or donation accessories, hats, mitts, and stuff. That seems doable. Um, and then yeah, and then once the fall hits, of course, it's sweater weather, so gotta knit all the sweaters and vests and cardigans and all the cozy stuff. I guess sock knitting would be good for the summer as well. I just haven't been much for knitting socks lately. Okay, and then what is your favorite? Okay, so what is your favorite yarn to work with and your least favorite? So I think I have a couple of answers to this. I feel like my most favorite yarn that I've been using lately, or I guess I could break it down into indie dyed yarns or superwash yarns. I really like the yarn, the Midnight Cravings Comfort Sport DK. I find that the DK weight yarns is like my go-to. If I could knit a pattern in DK weight, I will. I normally go out of my way to try and find DK patterns or DK or patterns knit in DK weight yarn. Worsted is okay as well, but I find that DK is like that fabulous middle ground between fingering and worsted. So my favorite like indie dyed yarn that I've used so far, that's super wash, would be Midnight Cravings Comfort Sport DK. My favorite, I guess like commercial brand yarn that I've knit with, and I've only knit with it once, is the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino. I just recently knit a sweater out of that. I still haven't blocked it, but I really enjoyed the process of knitting with it. I really liked the feel that it had in my hands. and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it feels after blocking it. I knit a hat out of it and I blocked that, and I felt like the hat feels really nice against my head. So I feel like the heavy merino, it's not like super rustic. It doesn't feel prickly on my skin. So, but I really enjoyed knitting with that heavy merino, and I really would like to knit with more knitting for olive yarns. It's just a little bit more of an expense. I mean, well, technically the indie dyed yarn is expensive, and the knitting for olive is like kind of in a similar price range of that. I think, is there another? I'm trying to think, what do I have here? I'm trying to think what other. Oh, and then another commercial yarn that I really enjoyed working with is the Cascade Eco Plus. It's like it comes in a really big hank, really chonky. I think it was like 400 grams or something, or maybe it was 250 grams. Maybe 400 is too much. It was like a big hank of it, and I knit my first colorwork sweater, and I think it was like, well, I guess it took me. I think it was like 30. It had to have been like $30 for the entire hank, and I think it took me 3, 6, 9, 12. So $120 for a sweater. I think I knit like a medium or a large colorwork sweater. And I feel like and I had quite a bit of the main color left over. So I feel like it was really good bang for your buck. And I really actually enjoy the hand feel of the Cascade Eco Plus. And I felt like the colors that were available were really nice. Like they had neutral colors, or sorry, they had natural colors, and then they had a couple of dyed colors. Like my sweater that I knit is made out of like a heathered pink and a neutral kind of like this color. As for what is it? The yarn, my least favorite yarn that I've ever worked with. Trying to think, what have I? Okay, so there was a yarn that I made a bag out of this past summer. I can't remember. Was it Barocco Seduced or something? It was a mixture of like a bunch of natural fibers. I think it was like silk, linen, cotton, viscose, or I don't know. Whatever the blend was, it was really like there was no give whatsoever. It was basically like just straight up cord. And it wasn't the worst thing to work with, but and it worked out fine for the bag, the mesh bag that I was knitting. But man, I did not enjoy working with that at all, and I couldn't wait for the project to be done. The only reason why, well, the biggest reason why I knit that project was because I wanted to use that yarn and I wanted to get it out of my stash. So I wouldn't necessarily say I enjoyed, yeah, knitting with that yarn, but I think the worst experience I've had with yarn, and maybe I just got extremely unlucky with this, but I knit the Weekender out of Queensland Lecce, or what was it? Yeah, Queensland yarns in the Lecce base, and I had each ball was I think 50 grams, and I kid you not, at least half of the balls that I knit from had 3 or more knots in it. And I feel like in a 50-gram ball of yarn, I mean, there shouldn't be more than 1 or 2, but 3 or more, like on one ball of it, I had 4 knots, which was really frustrating to knit. You know, you're knitting around, you get a knot, so I cut it out, I'll attach it again, and then I'll get 2 rounds in only to find another knot. And so I think I went through 3 balls before I got really frustrated, and I thought, okay, you know what? Instead of continuing to frustrate myself with this, I'm gonna hand wind the rest of all my balls, and that way I'll know when there's a knot, I can cut it out, and then I can choose to knit from the balls that have the least amount of knots, or like have the most amount of grams in them. And when I hand wound the rest of them, I think it had to have been like only 3 of the 10 balls didn't have knots. Every other one had knots in it, and I was very disappointed. But I can't really complain because I got the yarn from a D-stash at an incredibly inexpensive price. Like, I paid less than half of what the person who had the yarn paid for it. So it's not like I can really, I don't have a receipt. I didn't get it from a yarn shop. I couldn't go back, return it to someone. But I think maybe I just got extremely unlucky with that particular batch of yarn. Maybe it was just all the mill ends. I don't know, but that was the project from hell. I recently finally weaved in all the ends and blocked it and gave it to my sister. And by the time I had cut all the ends that I wove in, it was 34 ends I had to weave in one sweater. And I'm pretty sure my first weekender I knit, it was at least half of that. So probably like 16 ends to weave in. Anyway, so Queensland Leche was, I mean, yeah. The fiber content itself had a little bit of silk in it. I think it was like mulberry silk and merino. And it's just like this one that I'm working with now has a little bit of, it's like 45% silk and 55% merino. I find that combination is kind of weird on my hands. I don't really like the hand feel of it. So, I believe this, oh, was this silk? I honestly don't remember. But I find, I don't know, in any case, that was my experience with that particular yarn. So that, like I said, would be my least favorite one. So that answers that question. Let's cross that one. Least and favorite yarn to work with. All right, the next one is, do you have a favorite set of knitting accessories? And so for this one, honestly, my favorite, I guess, knitting accessory is a notions pouch with all of the notions in it. And so I basically have 1, 2, 3, I think I have 4. I think in one of my previous videos when I rated all my knitting tools, I talked about all my notions pouches and what I have in all of them. But essentially for knitting accessories, I always have a tape measure. So in my notions pouch, in each one, I always have a tape measure. And I also have cable needles. I usually have 2. Like this one I use for the smaller, like probably DK weight and smaller. And then I have this magnetic one that I use for worsted weight and up. And when I had my Fitbit that had a magnetic strip on it, I used to be able to just slap it on the strip. But I think you can get one of those like wrist things that are magnetized that you can put this on. But I don't really worry about it. I usually just put it off to the side while I don't need it. And of course, always have a pair of scissors. I think these ones are the DMC or DMC. The one, I don't know, I got it from Michael's I used a coupon, probably got it for $8 or something. And then of course, always have to have one of these little things of the needles, like darning needles. My camera won't focus. And then I have all the little Ziploc bags of various things. Like I always have a cable key. At least I'm probably, yeah, I've got more cable keys and some cable stoppers. Got light bulb stitch markers in there. And then I've got my cat ear stitch markers and another cable key in there. And then some more cable stoppers and another cable key. I have so many cable keys. I just make sure I always have at least 1 or 2 in every one of my notions pouches. And I do try to remember to put these cable stoppers in, or the stitch stoppers, or no, cable stoppers? Stop the stitches from falling off. But anyways, so I would say like in terms of accessories, these are, I always have a notions pouch with me. Anytime I bring a knitting project with me, I throw one of my notions pouches in. And I know that I'm covered for everything that I need. Oh, you know, the one thing that this particular notions pouch doesn't have is a stitch fixer, like the little crochet hook thing. I have one in 2 other notions pouches, but again, it's not like a necessity. I really don't use them very often. I can just pick up stitches or like fix stitches just by using the knitting needle. But in terms of accessories, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I think that's it. Like honestly, aside from, no, I think that's it. Yeah, all my accessories that I use on a regular basis are in each one of my notions pouches. So notions pouches are the best. I use them the most. out of all accessories. But of course, with the notions pouch comes all the notions inside. So, yeah, I think that would cover that question, I think. Let's see. What inspires me to knit a project, like a specific project? And honestly, what inspires me is what draws my attention. I think when I see something I like and I want to wear it, or it's not even necessarily like I want to knit it to wear it. I want to knit it to experience just to have the experience of knitting something. I would say, like, for example, the Lana vest, when I saw it for the first time, I thought, wow, that would be a really fun knit. And I don't own any vests, and I think that would be really interesting to try knitting something that might fit into my wardrobe that I might like. Before I knit my first Lana vest, I've never owned a vest, or at least I don't even remember the last time I wore a vest. And so it wasn't necessarily like what inspired me was the potential of having something in my wardrobe that I actually would like to wear that I've never worn before. And the other thing that inspired me was the fact that it had cables and texture on it. If it had lace, it would be even better, like cables and lace. It's just, I love the combination. But cables, lace, and texture, check off all the boxes. Add a couple of baubles in there. I'm all there. But yeah, so I guess on one hand, what inspires me is the overall potential experience that I would have knitting something. I think the second thing would be what inspires me is the potential. I guess, like, really what inspires me is the potential in a project, the potential for a great experience knitting it, and the potential for having a wardrobe, an item in my wardrobe that I'll be able to wear, that I can say I've made myself. And I think, I'm trying to think, yeah, I think that kind of covers it. I don't think, oh, the other thing too is sometimes when I see other people knitting something, it's interesting because I would say, for an example, the ranunculus. When I first saw it on Ravelry, the pictures on the designer page, or on the pattern page, didn't really spark any interest in me. I didn't really care for it. I didn't think it was very, I don't know, didn't think it was, very, I mean, it was a nice pattern. It just didn't catch my attention because it didn't really, I don't know, just, it wasn't my thing. But then the more I started watching knitting podcasts, and people on knitting podcasts were showing their ranunculus, or their ranunculi. People were knitting multiples of them, and they said it was a really fun knit, and it's very versatile in the sense that you can do short sleeves, long sleeves. You can knit it with thicker yarn, thinner yarn. Like, there's all sorts of ways that you can sort of work it out to make it what you want. And so I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe I will give the ranunculus a try, because it seems like everyone's had a really good experience knitting it. And to this day, I think I've knit like 4 of them, and I really enjoyed the yoke. But I didn't really care for, I'm not much for stockinette in the round. I don't know, not my thing. So it's like once I got past the yoke, the rest of it was kind of boring to me. But I did find the yoke was really fun to do. So I guess, so some inspiration in terms of when I pick something to knit does come from other people, and seeing other people knit certain things, like certain patterns and stuff. But for the most part, like I mentioned, I think the biggest inspiration, or what inspires me the most, is just the potential for the experience of knitting it. Everything from, like, the color of yarn I choose, the yarn I choose, the color I choose, and if there's any modifications I think of that I want to do in a pattern to make it, like, to tweak it for myself, to make it something that I think would be even more wearable for myself. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's really exciting to be able to be at a point where I can look at a pattern and say, oh yeah, I really like all these elements. However, I would change this one thing to make it fit my wardrobe better. And I think that's really exciting. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much what inspires me to pick my projects. Um, that's that. Okay, so I think oh, there's one more. Okay, I remember this one. So I was asked to pick one, cables or lace. And this one is really difficult because I love cables and I love lace, and I love cables and lace when they're together in a pattern, in a design. Um, However, I was thinking about this one this morning, and I think it depends on the season. Like, depends on what I'm knitting. I really love cable designs for like sweaters and vests and like more cold weather garments. Um, and then when it comes to like shawls and more warmer weather garments, I like lace. But if I was to pick one over the other, oh gosh, I really enjoy lace a lot, and I really enjoy cables. I think what it is I enjoy the process of knitting lace more than the process of knitting cables, but I think I like the overall look of cables more than I like lace. Maybe. Um Gosh. Yeah, it's so hard because they both have a place, and when they're put together they're even better. But I guess if I had to choose one over the other, I think I would go cables. I think like looking at all the things that I've either got on my needles or that I have recently finished, the majority of them all have cables with very little, if no lace at all. And so I think to answer that question, yes, I think I would go cables. Cables over lace. But if I could do both, I would. If a pattern has both, I would. It's right up my alley. Um, yeah, so that covers all the knitting related questions that I got. And I've got two more questions that are a little bit more of like a personal life questions. And well, the first one is kind of really was adjacent to knitting. And the question was, what is it like being a podcaster? And honestly, this is like a really, I don't know, interesting question to answer, because I feel like everyone's experience being a podcaster, or like having, even like just giving it a shot, like putting out one or two videos on YouTube kind of thing. I think everyone has a different experience because, yeah, I like, for me in the beginning, I was so nervous. I was so anxious and so like, oh my god, what if no one likes me? Like, I was very much caught up in the thought that what if what I do no one likes, and it's just a waste of time kind of thing. But I feel like I've gotten pretty good reception since starting almost 3 years ago at this point, and I've had a lot of breaks, a lot of long breaks in between podcast episodes throughout the last 3 years. So I haven't been like the most consistent at being consistent every month kind of thing. And so I think it's, in the beginning it was really anxiety producing, but it was really fun too because of the community of people that like comment on the videos, and then like the DMs on Instagram of people, reaching out beyond the video and asking, "Oh, hey, can you let me know like what was your experience when you knit this thing, or did you have the same issue when you knit that project or this design," kind of thing. So it's really cool to be a part of the community, that like people feel comfortable like reaching out to me and asking me questions, or just saying hi and leaving a compliment or a comment or something. So I feel like over time I've gotten a lot more comfortable, and I feel now I'm way less anxious about putting a video out. And yeah, I think at this point now I've gotten to I don't know. I feel like maybe everyone, well, maybe this is a over exaggeration, or like an over generalization, but I feel like anyone or most people in this realm of podcasting go through a phase of numbers and statistics. And I certainly went, at least for me, I went through a phase where I was looking at my numbers and statistics, and like I don't know, the watch hours and the likes versus dislikes, and like just all the statistics, the analytics, and all that fun stuff that normally I'm really all about. I love numbers. I love crunching numbers. I love compiling data and all that good stuff. It's really fun for me. But when it came to YouTube and certain videos, doing well and others just not doing well in terms of like numbers, like one video would get 1,000 views and then the next one would get 200 views kind of thing. It really kind of messed me up a little bit, and I got really in my head about like, oh, I'm not doing this right, or oh, I don't know. I got really down on myself, and there's a point where I took a very, very long break from YouTube. And now that I'm back, I have like a whole new mindset of like, okay, I'm just doing this for fun. I really enjoy doing this because of the community that I have developed on YouTube and on Instagram, and the friends that I have made have been so worth sticking to this format and to continue doing this. And so I think it's really fun now that I've gotten over the number part of it, like looking at the numbers and the statistics and the I don't know. It's just I'm doing this for fun. And I feel like I finally have broken through that barrier in my mind that it's like, oh, I have to do really good or else it's not worth it. It's like, well, no, it's worth it. Even if I think it's worth it because the people that do watch my videos seem to enjoy it, and I feel like I am producing at least something that's interesting to someone. I mean, I know I'm not for everyone. For me, there's people I like to watch and some people I don't like to watch, and I'm sure everyone's like that. Some people click with one type of person and don't with another. So I'm just really grateful for the audience that I do have here on YouTube and on Instagram. And I'm so grateful for all the friends that I've made in this community. I think it's just, yeah, it's been awesome because I have two friends in real life that knit and that I talk to occasionally. But one lives out here, but our schedules don't line up very well, so we don't often get to knit together. And then another friend lives further out towards Vancouver, and so it's not as easy to get together to knit with people. But online I feel like even though I haven't done like virtual knit nights or anything like that, I think it's still fun to be a part of something like the Irene Lynn knit along and like other things in the community where you can tag someone and be like, hey, did you see this pattern, because that you guys both have a similar interest and stuff. So it's really cool to make those connections with people in the community, and I'm always so I don't know, it feels really exciting when people do message me and say nice things, or like ask a question, or I don't know, like anything like, I don't know, it's really fun. I think it's really great. So being a podcaster, I wouldn't say it's like life altering, so to speak. It does, I would say like this past year at Knit City and last year at Knit City, I had a couple people come up to me and tell me like, oh, hey, I love your podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, not to say like I felt like a celebrity or anything, but it's that a part of me was just like, oh my gosh, like people watch me. It's like people recognize me. It's like, oh my gosh, people actually like me. So I like it's that I feel like I've always had this voice in the back of my head that has always told me like, oh, no one likes you and you're not that great and blah blah blah, you're just annoying kind of thing. And so it's nice to be able to have experiences where it's like that voice kind of gets shut up. It's like, oh, actually there are people that do like me and I like me. So I don't know. Anyways, that's sorry, I'm going off on a tangent there, but essentially I would say like I'm not doing it for like the fame or anything like that. I do it just because I like doing it, and everything that comes with it is an experience in itself. So yeah, that's that. I don't know what else. I'm not sure what else I could say because like I said, everyone's going to have a different experience as a podcaster. Like, not even just a podcaster, but just putting yourself out there on the internet, on social media in general, is like very nerve-wracking, but also exciting. So, and like I said, it's just everyone's experience is going to be different. And now I sound like a broken record, so I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay, so the last question I got was, what does a typical day in my life look like? And this one, I had to really think about it because I feel like I've gotten to a point in my life that I've gotten into a routine that is very, I wouldn't say like mundane, but my day to day life is essentially, if I'm not working, I'm knitting. And I guess, let's see, it depends on the day, because like on work days, it's basically like I always do my morning routine and then I have my work that I do. And I'm very lucky that I get to work from home and I kind of get to set my own schedule. So it's like as long as I get my work done, as long as I meet my deadlines, I'm good to go. So sometimes I will space things out throughout the day. So it's kind of a, like on a nice day like today, if I was working, I would definitely be getting up like, oh, I guess it's whatever time it is right now would be the perfect time to go for a walk around the lake. I've already been for a walk around the lake this morning, but I would definitely, after sitting at a computer for several hours, I would want to get up and go for a walk. Um, and then, of course, like, you know, in the evenings after work is done, just chilling, knitting and watching podcasts and stuff. I don't have the most exciting life at the moment. I did recently spend time with my sister, which was nice. But yeah, on non-work days, it's pretty much knitting all day. Knitting, working on side projects and stuff like that. So, um, mm, yeah, certainly could be more exciting, but I'm very much a homebody. So if I'm usually at home, and if I'm not, it's usually because I'm out for a walk, or like today, I've come to my parents' place to film a video. So it would be, I actually was thinking about this and I'm like, oh, it'd be really interesting to do like a vlog style video of what my week looks like on a day-to-day basis. So I'm thinking I might do some kind of a vlog style video. Very much inspired by Faith from We Just Talk About Knitting. She recently did a week vlog style video, and that's kind of, yeah, inspired me to do the same, even though my life is very, like I said, it's pretty laid back. I just do a lot of knitting work, and yeah, I do also game. I do play games with friends every now and then, so that's like my second hobby, my second main hobby. I have two main hobbies, knitting and gaming. So if I'm not knitting, then I'm gaming. But yeah, so that might be something that I might be looking into, is filming a little bit every day and compiling it into a video for like just a week in the life of, if anyone's interested in that. I think it would be fun. So yeah. Okay, so that pretty well answers all the questions that I was asked. And yeah, I didn't even finish one row on, I think I got like halfway through. Oh yeah, I'm halfway through a row. I'm very animated when I talk. I gesticulate a lot, and so that's probably why I didn't get much knitting done. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm looking at it now; it's a lot longer than I anticipated it being. So I was like, I'm pretty sure I was like, oh yeah, there's only 8 questions. I'll get through it no problem. But I do tend to go off on tangents. So we'll see during editing if I can cut some stuff out. But in any case, yeah. Thanks for joining me for this video, and thanks again for everyone who asked me questions. It was really fun to write them down and like really think about them. I was initially just gonna do it off the top of my head, but I felt like I needed a little bit more time to think about the answers to some of these questions, and so that's why I wrote them down this morning. And as I did my morning walk, I was like doing the thought process of answering each one. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I think my next video should be a podcast video. So until then, happy knitting. Bye!